multiple officers have been shot in Charlotte, North Carolina. What we know now is one U.S. Marshal is dead and the suspect is dead as well. But there were multiple law enforcements that were shot. Now, I'm going to be taking y'all to live coverage in a few minutes. But before I could get started, I just want to salute everybody that's catching this on the replay. I want to salute everybody that's watching from the clouds. I want to salute all my moderators. Salute to the whole Rock Squad. Let me read my disclaimer and then I'll turn it over to the live coverage. Copyright disclaimer under Section 107 of the Copyright Act of 1976. Allowance is made for fair use for purposes such as criticism, comment, news reporting, scholarship, and research. This demonstration is for entertainment and educational purposes only. Once again, this is live coverage. I'm going to be taking you all to live coverage. Multiple law enforcements were shot in Charlotte, North Carolina. One U.S. Marshal and the suspect has been pronounced dead. All right.
People are trying to get back to some sense, even maybe get out and see what the commotion is. I mean, people out here walking their dogs to give you a sense of what the atmosphere is like. I want to take you back through. We were informed that at 1:48 is whenever officers were responding to this area, they were serving that search warrant, and then they took heavy gunfire. The communication that I hope we're able to get any moment now, what that detail is officers arriving on scene, officers taking heavy gunfire. At one point they said that they were taking rifle fire as they were hiding behind vehicles, hiding behind portions of the house. It sounded as if one of the officers that was hit, it sounded as if they were in the back of the house. They also heard in parts officers asking for more ammo as they were trying to take on this situation, even calling for backup as they were saying, man down, we have an officer shot. They were calling for vehicles to kind of come and give them some sense of cover, to help them extract, get their brothers in law enforcement loaded up to get them to the ambulance or get them to the hospital as quickly as possible so they can start working on them to save them as best they can. And those are just little portions that we have been able to really pick out in this scanner traffic. And I spoke with a gentleman, he's been kind of right by my side helping me dissect a lot of this information. And I asked him, I said, hey, having a family that's worked in law enforcement, then seeing this, does that make you second guess it? Does that give you any hesitation? And he said, no. I mean, he looks at it as those are his brothers in law enforcement, and you just got that sense of pride and that longing to want to be on a force to serve this community or serve a community in this way, laying it down and protecting the man beside you. And those are the conversations that I'm having out here with individuals as the people that live in this area say that they're shocked that something like this would have happened. Even though they hear gunfire all the time, they are shocked that it elevated to this level and that it may have involved one of their neighbor's person that they see every single day while out and about. Again, we're going to stay on scene now that we're able to get a little closer. We're going to try and do that between now and whenever we are going to be live on air next to see if changing our vantage point may be able to give us a little bit better idea of the landscape of what officers were dealing as they were exchanging gunfires with the suspect. Brian.
Daniel, thanks, and certainly a great account of what's going on there. And yeah, you can see people that were just going by, they're let out in the neighborhood now again because they're being able to ride their bikes and kind of digest all the information that they just had with the deadly shooting that happened.
Yeah, but a lot of terror of not knowing what exactly was happening, if they could go home, or if they already were home, what exactly was happening. Hearing rifle fire that some officers were taking, just some really scary details there. But we actually have video from when this all kind of started, right, Alicia?
We do, and we're going to show you that video in a minute, but I do want to really piggyback off what Brian just said. The landscape of what we saw there in Daniel Pierce's live shot. You saw somebody walk their dog. You saw somebody drive by with their bike, and that really shows you this is a community, this is a neighborhood. I've been monitoring social media all afternoon since that call came in around that 2 o'clock time frame, and you hear people talk about they never thought something like this would happen in their neighborhood, and it just shows you what could possibly happen and how this was just a community that was just really taken off guard. Okay, let's show you the first video that we have here, and this is from Facebook Live that somebody was streaming. I do have to let you know that we had to take the volume down just a little bit just because we didn't want to air any profanity, but it shows you how tense the moments were as you see those officers. You see, look at that, guns drawn right there, walking by and then potentially running to that scene. Where this video is taken is about a block away from where that crime scene actually is, almost kind of in the backyard of what we've been showing you today. The second video I want to take, you're going to hear the commentary from Rodney Baisley, who recorded this video. He's a delivery driver. Take a listen.
Crazy, I stopped right there. Oh, they busted. Can we take cover? Well, they still shooting, boy. Pray for that man. He out here doing God's work.
And that video right there, as you hear Rodney say, pray for that one man, that's an officer in uniform that they're taking away, just kind of really bringing that point home. I know, Brian, Annie, you both, I'm sure, have covered hostage situations, you've covered crime scenes like this, and it's so important for everybody who is out there to take cover, because you never know where the bullets are going to be aiming, you don't know where they're coming from, so much that can happen in that crime scene, and that is why authorities say it's so important for you to stay away, for you to let us do our jobs and bring you the latest of what you need to know. But when you just look at that video, Brian, what comes to your mind as you saw those police officers run and then also bring one of their own out?
Well, knowing that it was a U.S. Marshals serving a warrant there, you had a lot of people involved. That's what happens when you have a warrant investigation and likely a very dangerous criminal that was inside one of the homes. And we're certainly going to have to find out exactly who the other two people were in the house. Did they know that they were harboring a fugitive of some sorts? Or did they, the guy even, was he from Charlotte? Where is he from? We don't know that kind of information, but in that type of neighborhood right there, you just see all the people that have no idea what's going on when they storm up. But also, we do want to go out to Walter Bowers right now, because Walter, you, former police officer, lawyer in town, you've also know these type of situations that can happen. When you saw some of that video when the shooting broke out, what does that say to you?
Well, that says a lot to me. It says it's the constant reminder of the danger that our officers face on a daily basis. As your reporting has discovered, these particular marshals were out, and their job was simply to go after some of the most dangerous individuals in the country, and they were doing their job. And when those shots rang out, I can just tell you from personal experience, law enforcement as well as military, there's this moment of shock. But if you look carefully, the training by sharing and telling everyone to take cover, and then they started to handle business. And so we're certainly proud of the way that that they appear to have conducted themselves. Again, nobody knows all of the details, but from what we've seen thus far, it looked like all of our men and women handled themselves in a great manner in light of what they were facing.
And Walter, since we checked in with you, what's now a couple hours ago, we've learned that one suspect in the home was found deceased. We know that one U.S. Marshal is deceased. What do investigators do now? What does that scene look like? How long are they going to be there? And what kind of questions do they have to ask these other two people who were also said to be inside that home?
Well, they're going to be on the scene for quite a while. Really, everywhere that those rounds landed become a part of the crime scene. Then they also have to discover what, if any, involvement those other individuals had that were inside that residence. Were they complicit? Were they held captive? A lot of questions and things of that nature. And so they'll be there conducting an investigation. And sometimes it makes you feel as if since the suspect is dead, that there's not a lot to investigate. Well, in reality, they have to do just as much work, whether or not that individual is taken into custody or if the individual ends up deceased. So they'll be doing a lot of work, and it's going to take quite some time before we have all of the answers.
And Walter Bowers, I just want to ask you a couple things because you have just such a great account for, because you're an attorney now, but you were an officer at one point in terms of understanding. When you have U.S. Marshals arrive on the scene, potentially how much backup do they have? Because they know the charges that they're, as to why they're there. But take us through that, what you're able to let us know. And I know that we need to protect the integrity of the case specifically for this, but just so people can have some insight, because you had 30, 40 officers that arrived at the scene within minutes.
Yeah, sure. I will give a basic scenario because we don't know all of the facts, and cases like this are very fact specific.
Right.
Generally speaking, what happens is that when you have a situation where you have an individual that has outstanding warrants, there's an assessment made all the way down to what CMPD officers do every day. This is a person that has some outstanding traffic tickets that are nonviolent, or is this person that is wanted for a homicide? Mm-hmm. And based on that initial assessment, then that's going to determine what happens next. If it's a violent criminal, and especially one that has weapons or that's evaded law enforcement before, well, that's going to take a different approach. It's going to probably take a plan. And part of that plan is probably first and foremost being able to identify and confirm where this individual is. And that may take some intelligence gathering and things of that nature. Once they identify where the individual is, generally speaking, you'd like to place a perimeter around that place. And a perimeter would be essentially anywhere that suspect could ingress or egress, right? So all of the roads, all of the places that a person can go, you want to make a big circle, if you will, around it. And then you'll have your tactical officers that would make an approach in any event that it was a violent suspect that was known to be violent. And it's in those moments where this happens every day, and more often than not, there is not violence. But unfortunately, too many times these days, these are the moments where individuals, instead of turning themselves in, they engage law enforcement, and that's when things get quite dangerous.
Talking about quite dangerous here, when they walk up to a house, what are they thinking, or what's their mode of operation when they do go up and knock on somebody's door? Are they coming in from back? How does that go?
Well, yeah, even a patrol officer is taught about the danger of approaching a front door, right? You know, officers have to be very careful about standing in front of a front door. Officers are trained to look around and use all of their senses as they are approaching, listening, feeling, things of that nature. And then it depends on the type of approach that was decided upon. There could be a tactical entry, no knock entry, things of that nature. There could be a knock followed by forced entry. So it's just really dependent upon the intelligence and really dependent on the suspect. But there's a lot of things going through their mind because they are fully aware that at any moment the suspect could see them and they can't see the suspect, which certainly put the officers in a great disadvantage.
We have one more question for you, just briefly, if you can explain this, because as watching this scene, I was curious to find out why would they not put up crime scene tape around the area of which they knew was the perimeter? And then my other question for you is, as you're seeing the video, it seems like they went behind where the crime scene was instead of in front. Any insight you can give us as to why that would have been the tactical way to be able to maneuver the situation?
Yeah, sure. So when you're going to approach or apprehend a suspect, even though there are a lot of officers involved, the best thing that an officer has going for him or her is the element of surprise, right? And you want to be swift as well. And so usually a perimeter is going to consist of officers using their patrol vehicles and things of that nature, kind of surrounding and being able to kind of see and communicate via radio. But you wouldn't really have the time, and you'd also be putting yourself at a disadvantage putting up crime scene tape. So crime scene tape is usually used when the scene is secure and now you're in the process of collecting evidence. So if now you're seeing the crime scene tape. In regards to your second question, what happens, to be quite honest with you, is when shots begin to be fired, you really have no idea where they are coming from because you have buildings, right? And so firearms tend to echo. And so if you may think it's in front of you, you may think it's behind you. So probably what we saw was officers just essentially looking for anywhere they could to take cover as trying to assess what was going on in that moment.
And Walter, we're waiting on a press conference here from authorities to give us some more information. Question two, when the two suspects that are in the house, what kind of questioning is going to happen with those right now that were taken out of the house after this incident?
Oh yeah, that's going to be quite a few questions. First and foremost, trying to identify what, if any, involvement those individuals had. What did they know? What should they have known as it relates to this individual's outstanding warrants? What, if any, support did they provide prior to law enforcement getting there? Because certainly, if they did allow this individual to reside there, or whatever the case may be, I'm not sure who was the actual resident there. But if they were engaged in any capacity, they'd certainly be facing some felony charges. And then what's worse is we don't know their involvement, if any, because we don't know that they may have had as it relates to the shots being fired. So all of those things are going to be investigated. I can guarantee you they probably would swab their hands and things of that nature for gun powder. I mean, just checking every block. They're not going to leave any stone unturned. They're going to check cell phone records to see was there some type of communication before, during, or after. They want to do a lot just to see what these individuals may have been doing while all of this was taking place.
And Walter, usually when the U.S. Marshals office is called in, that is above, the sheriff's office or CMPD. What kind of crimes or warrants does the Marshals office usually get involved in?
Yeah, so in our country, law enforcement is essentially very geographically restricted, right? So the CMPD is primarily, generally speaking, restricted to Charlotte and Mecklenburg County, and the sheriffs similarly. U.S. Marshals, they have a different objective, which is to pursue felons across the country, right, and even abroad if necessary. That's what they do, and so that's why they show up on the scene, because they've had information that a person could be located, in this case in our jurisdiction, and their assignment is to apprehend that individual at all costs.
Last question that we have for you too, Walter Byers. Appreciate you joining us for this, giving us so much insight. They had a negotiator that was on the scene. What can you tell us as to what that process was like? And for us to hear that the suspect is dead, anything that you're able to just kind of weigh in on that.
Yeah, negotiators are special people. I had the humble opportunity to work alongside a negotiator. That was not part of my technical job, but I just had a chance to get to know her personally, and she was awesome. She had a way of communicating with someone to calm them down in the worst situations. So obviously we don't know whether or not any negotiator was actually able to make contact with this particular suspect, but I can tell you that they're highly trained to be able to empathize, to be able to understand, to get people to think about the decision that they're making. And sometimes they're successful and sometimes they are not. But again, in this case, we don't know. But that's what they are trained, and they are very highly trained and highly efficient at what they do.
All right, Walter Bowers, current lawyer, former law enforcement officer. We appreciate your insight into this really scary and sad day for the Charlotte community, with a lot of questions still left to be answered. But again, we do know that one suspect is deceased, and unfortunately, a U.S. Marshal also losing their life in this situation today. Thank you. We'll be checking in with you in a little bit, but really just kind of giving a background and the mindset into these law enforcement officers who are highly specialized in the situations they have to deal with. And we all want information, but they're working hard and having to make real life, real time decisions.
Yeah, and that video that we saw earlier of the shooting live as it happened gives us a lot of good insight about what happened. Is that all of a sudden they have to switch on a dime there to go from what's going on here in shock to try to figure out exactly what just happened on that. And again, 5:45 or so, we're waiting on a press conference here from officials. But as we do, we're certainly very sad to know that one of the U.S. Marshals has died today.
Yeah, I mean, just very, very, very tragic. You can be able to see here people already putting out flowers. It says in honor of our brave deputies, and probably it's going to finish with and our service members. But that just shows you right now, it's wait for and officers. Again, it says in honor of our brave deputies and officers, as he's taping that message right there to the pot of flowers, really bringing home just the solemn feeling that the community is feeling in that area. We're going to go live now to Derek Dillinger, who is live, and he's starting to see a makeshift memorial, from what I understand, of people bringing by flowers, as we're able to zoom out and be able to see there as to how people are just kind of remembering what has happened today. Derek?
We don't have Derek live for us, but that's where he is. That's his camera that's working. We won't have him live for a report, but we are hearing that Chief Johnny Jennings and Mayor Guy Lyles are at the staging area, and they will be participating in that press conference that was originally scheduled.
So basically, we waiting for the press conference from the mayor and the chief. Salute Melanie, salute Melanie, salute Londa, salute Miss Groovy, salute Tracy. So while we wait, one U.S. Marshal is dead and the suspect is also dead. So we're waiting for a news conference, a live news conference with the mayor of Charlotte and the chief of the police from Charlotte. So apparently they were serving a warrant and things went left. There were 3 individuals in the home. One of them was the suspect and the other 2 wasn't. So the law enforcement have been questioning those 2 that were in the house. Now, we don't know exactly what took place, but so this is some footage of where it took place.
To take place, Brian, Annie, I mean, just taking the account as to what has happened today, a very somber tone that we saw there where the flowers were, but just so many people just so, one, wanting to find out what happened, and 2, just how fast all of this happened.
It's so sad because you never know what's going to happen when the day unfolds, especially for law enforcement officers when you work in that kind of line of work. And it's just very sad and tragic that happened today, to lose an officer and someone else lost their lives, whether the suspect did, and we don't know exactly the incidents that transpired. Hopefully we'll learn a little bit more information, but you certainly see a lot of the law enforcement community coming in to support everyone right now, and also all around the nation, because this is certainly going out to the rest of the nation to understand exactly that we have an officer, a law enforcement officer that has been killed today. And to see that is when we heard from Daniel Pierce that there was 100 some gunshots that came out, and we saw a little bit of that in that video that just erupted right there on Galway Drive.
And we knew that this was a very a serious situation, just given the police response of people texting all of us and calling the newsroom and asking why are police vehicles speeding in this direction. We saw it on 85. I-77 was closed down for a short period of time. entrance ramps onto 277, and that traffic was really the big story surrounding the biggest story here in Charlotte today. And as Brian mentioned, there's support coming in from the law enforcement community. Excuse me, but Governor Roy Cooper, of course, obviously tweeting that he's been in contact with law enforcement, just trying to stay abreast of this situation and offering any state help, and that might be needed in such a situation like this, where we know that one U.S. Marshal is now dead, but we know that multiple were hurt, and their families are going to have to be dealing with this as well.
And there's so much, and we're going to go now live to the news conference that's happening right now. Let's take a listen as we see Mayor Vi Lyles up near the podium. And as they're preparing right now, it seems as Mayor Vi Lyles just made a gesture with her heart, with her hand over her heart. Not quite sure as to who is going to go first. As you see, CMP lining up as to they are getting ready to be able to address the public as to what happened.
Well, you have Marcus Jones there, the county manager. You have several others from police and fire. All of law enforcement represented today, and we're just getting ready to understand a little bit more about exactly what happened. But now, this is what happens. You see the FBI there, Homeland Security, ATF, all law enforcement just shocked to understand and very saddened to understand exactly what happened. Let's go ahead and listen in.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Kevin Petrus. I'm a lieutenant with the Charlotte-Mecklenburg Police Department here in Charlotte, North Carolina. I appreciate your patience this afternoon as we have worked through the situation that we've been dealing with today. There's no doubt that our Charlotte community has experienced a tragedy today. And it's one that, as a law enforcement community, we always know is possible, but we never expect. It never gets easier. We're going to do our best to answer your questions today, to provide details, to be transparent about the events of this afternoon. But I do implore you to understand that we're dealing with a tragic loss of life today. And that loss of life is very fresh. There's details that we do not know. There's questions that we frankly just aren't going to be able to answer. We will take your questions, but first, the Chief of Police for the Charlotte-Mecklenburg Police Department, Johnny Jennings, is going to come and give you some information and share his thoughts. I'll spell that for you. Johnny is Johnnny. Last name is Jennings, Jennings. After Chief Jennings, the mayor of the city of Charlotte, Vi Lyles, is going to come and share her thoughts. Vi, V-I, Lyles, L-Y-L-E-S. Chief.
Thank you, Lieutenant. Today's an absolute tragic day for the city of Charlotte and for the profession of law enforcement. Today we lost some heroes that are out to just simply trying to keep our community safe. I'm going to try to go through a series of events of how this all occurred and played out, and then tell you a little bit more about the injuries and the things that we had to endure today as a profession and as a city. So about 1:30 p.m. this afternoon, the U.S. Marshals Fugitive Task Force went to the 5,000 block of Galway Avenue and attempt to serve a warrant on an individual for possession of firearm by a convicted felon. When they approached that individual, they were met with gunfire. Officers returned gunfire and struck the victim, who was later pronounced deceased in the front yard of the residence. As officers approached that individual, they then received additional gunfire from inside of the residence. So after a long standoff, we were able to clear this residence and confirm that there were 2 additional people inside. They were both brought to the police station as persons of interest, and we're trying to determine now what exactly occurred inside of the residence. Tragically, there were 3 members of the U.S. Marshals Task Force who were pronounced deceased, and there were 4 CMPD officers who were shot, one being in critical condition, who is now in the hospital fighting for his life. A total of 8 law enforcement officers were shot by the suspects in this house. So we are very early in the investigation. CMPD will lead this investigation. We still have a lot to uncover, a lot of questions that are not answered right now. So please respect the fact that I won't be able to answer some of the questions that you're going to have. But at the same time, we are going to diligently work on this to ensure that we bring a respect to these officers and these law enforcement officials that lost their lives today. And this is a good example of what we try to tell people every single day, that when we put on this uniform, that we don't have any guarantees that we'll return home. But yet we have a lot of great men and women across this entire country that do it every single day to make sure that you're safe in your communities. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Mayor Vilaus, so she'll want to say a few words.
You never know what your day is going to be like. You can't plan things like this to be in this space at this time. We've lost 3 people. They lost their lives after they gave us the opportunity to be in a safe place, and they lost their lives. These are people that care deeply about what they've done for a profession, and now today we have to say to them how much we are grateful for what they have done. We won't know very much about what happened until their investigation is done, but I know this about our community. Our community stands up for people. They stand up for all of the people that work for us, that make it possible, all of our officers. If you had a little bit of problem driving around today, I don't think anybody was too worried about that, because we know that there is a reason for this, and there's a reason that everything happens, and sometimes we don't understand it. But at this point, I know that this community will seek understanding. I know that our police department will seek understanding. I want to say this. We're very, very much grateful. Today I heard from the White House about the loss of our officers and the situation that we were having to adjust to. I've heard from Congresswoman Adams as well as Congressman Jeff Jackson. On the way over here, the Speaker of the House, Tim Moore, and the President of our State Senate, Phil Berger, they all talked about what can they do to help us. Now, we may not know what help we need right now today, but we do know that when people reach out to say, this is something that is important that has happened, and they want to be a part of whatever we do, because there will be a time that we will commemorate these people that lost their lives. You think about it. Your father, your husband, your friend, your neighbor, all of them were one person like that. And today they're not going home. You know, 3 people lost their lives today. And the most that I can ask of our community is that we honor and respect them for all the work that they've done, all the work that we will do to make it possible for our city to be safer. Every one of us wants to be in a situation where you get up this morning and you get to come back home. And someone didn't today. Keep your prayers, keep your faith. Make sure that these officers who have families have people to reach out and hold them up, because they will need this. And we are a city that will make it possible for them to be this way, to be able to live and know that we honor and respect the loss that they have. Thank you very much for this time.
Thank you, Mayor. I want to take just a moment just to clarify. There's a total of 4 CMPD officers who were struck by gunfire today, and 4 task force officers. That's a total of 8 law enforcement officers who were struck by gunfire today. I want to take a minute to recognize the people standing behind us here today. The first responder community the government organizations that stand behind me. This is a community within the community. And it's incredible the bond that we have, and it's demonstrated in no other way like it is in moments of crisis and in moments of tragedy like the one that occurred today. So to recognize the people that are with me today, we have the Charlotte Fire Department, medic, Department of Homeland Security, the Federal Bureau of Investigation, Department of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, U.S. Marshals, Mecklenburg County District Attorney's Office, North Carolina Highway Patrol, and I sure hope I didn't leave anybody off the list. But for on their behalf, I want to thank you for being here, and on behalf of all the men and women that they represent who answer the call, especially when tragedy strikes, I want to thank them. Any questions that you have, Chief Jennings and Mayor Lyles are available. Yes.
That they're going into a situation where they know that someone has a weapon, how does that change the way that they respond? If at all?
Well, it certainly changes the response. The question is, how does it change the response when you're going into a residence where someone has a history of having a weapon? And let me just be clear, the U.S. Marshals Service, their fugitive task force is comprised of surrounding agencies. So there are multiple agencies that are involved with the fugitive task force with the Marshal Service. The Charlotte-Mecklenburg Police Department is a member of the U.S. Marshals task force as well. So anytime you are dealing with someone who is a convicted felon and who has been caught previously with a firearm, it does raise concerns and raise awareness when you are responding. So when they do that, part of the reason the task force is such an imperative part of what we do every single day is because they have extensive training and they train together to be able to deal with these kind of situations. It's always going to be something that's on the forefront of their thought process when you're going after Charlotte's most dangerous people. And unfortunately today was something tragic that we never want to see. I never want to stand in front of you today to talk about an incident such something this tragic. It's really heartbreaking. Yes. You know, I'm not ready to tell you all of the agencies. What I can confirm is that 4 CMPD officers were shot. 1 CMPD officer is in very critical condition at this point. We do have to make sure that family members and all of them are notified, so I'm not going to release which agencies they were with the task force. So the question is the number of shooters. Right now, we believe there are 2 shooters involved. Again, we have 2 people of interest at the police station that are being questioned right now. And we have confirmed that the individual that was set up, that we were serving the warrant on, was the individual who fired the initial shots and was deceased in the front yard at the end of all of this. So.
Besides the one critical condition, how
the other officers, besides the officer that's in critical condition, the other officers are stable. The degree of injuries are varying, anywhere from a grazed wound to a wound that requires a little bit more attention, but they are stable and expected to be okay.
And can you say if any of your officers who are shot in this, were they responding patrol officers, were they SWAT officers?
Yes, I can confirm that we do have a sergeant who is assigned to the task force who was on the scene. That officer immediately called for help. The 3 officers or the 4 officers that were shot are officers who were responding to the scene. I'll get to you. Yes, sir. Yes.
Can you just tell us what firearms these suspects had when you were able to get into that house? Were there any other firearms?
That's still early to tell. Right now, we're still doing the investigation in the house. I can tell you it was a high-powered rifle that was involved on the suspect then. Yes, sir.
First of all, my thoughts and prayers are with you and
Thank you.
U.S. Marshals. What would you say about the bravery of the officers who responded to the scene, knowing that there are guns used they were actively being shot at?
Thank you.
you for that question. So the bravery of our officers that responded to the scene, knowing that they're going into gunfire, is what I've been saying for many years. Is in the face of danger, our people step up, and this profession steps up, and that's what we should be defined as doing, because they knew what they were going into and still held their own in an attempt to apprehend this suspect. They knew that they had officers that needed help. They needed to be extracted from their location, yet they went in, some getting shot themselves as a result. So the bravery, the heroism, everything that goes down that defines what our profession is, our people demonstrated that today, and I couldn't be more proud of the response. I couldn't be more proud of the partnerships that we have at every single level of law enforcement, every single level of public safety. I can't say enough about the phone calls, the text messages, the support, and as you heard Lieutenant Petrus say, or the mayor say, that a lot of it is, what do you need? How can we help? And it just, in times like this, that's exactly what we need in these situations.
Chief, in terms of others surrounding you, you're against law enforcement agencies. Can you talk about how many from other companies helped out or other law enforcement agencies helped out?
Yeah, so the question is, how many other agencies are with the Fugitive Task Force or just responded? So the Fugitive Task Force, I don't have the exact numbers. With Charlotte has one member on the Fugitive Task Force as a sergeant, but mainly the surrounding agencies within our surrounding cities and towns are members of that, and we can get you those numbers exactly what they're doing.
That actually helped out responding to this, whether it was providing prepared cash or whatever.
Yeah, so the officers who responded to help out, all the federal agencies were on the scene with me, and state agencies, the Mecklenburg County Sheriff's Office was there as well. We had agencies from Pineville to different towns within our county. They sent officers in to answer our calls for service, because we obviously, you can imagine the manpower needs that it was to secure that scene and to do the transports. So they were very helpful to ensure that we did not let our citizens down in responding to those calls for service, and they were very helpful in that. So. No children in the house. There was one juvenile that we did get out of the house. So, yes. Not right now. The type of ammunition, that's still part of the investigation. All of that will have to be looked at as far as when we get into the house. Also recover any projectiles that might have been taken out as treatment to the officers. So there's a lot that we still have to uncover. We're not there yet. So the question is whether this was an appropriate time to serve a warrant. I will tell you. I will say, when you're talking about a felon who has propensity to carry a firearm, there is no great time to do it. Whether it's in the middle of the night or in the middle of the day. The interest in the Fugitive Task Force was to ensure that this person was brought to justice and taken off the streets. And unfortunately, he decided that he was going to respond to that by gunfire at our officers. Yes, ma'am.
Have any prior histories or calls regarding this person residence?
I do not right now, but the history of this residence, the history of the individual, all of that will be released very soon. We're going to try to get that information out. We do have a lot of family notifications that we have to make in order to provide more information to each and every one of you about this individual. So. Yeah, so the question is right now, is the shelter in place open? Is the area okay to go back to normal duties? Yes, we're going to be at the residence processing the crime scene. probably for several hours. But as far as the lockdowns and closure of roads and all of that, we have opened that back up. The house has been secured, our officers have been cleared, and now comes the tedious task of ensuring that we collect the evidence and process the scene. Yes.
One suspect was shot in that front yard. You mentioned there were 2 more people inside that house that are now in custody. One
Yes.
of those 2 people, the additional shooter, or was there a second victim, or one of the suspects?
Yeah, so the question is about the 2 other individuals who came out of the house later. I can't confirm right now which one or if either are the suspects in the additional shots that were fired. What I can tell you is that we had the house secured, and the perimeter was secure, and we continued to take gunfire from inside the residence. And after we cleared the residence, there were only 2 individuals that came out. One 17-year-old juvenile, and then another female who was taken out as well. So.
Just to confirm, there is only one suspect that is deceased.
One suspect is deceased, yes.
Chief, do you know, I hate to ask this, do you know if this has been deadly as a law enforcement day in Mecklenburg County or Charlotte this year?
I cannot. I've been with the Charlotte Mecklenburg Police Department for 32 years. I can't remember an incident where 3 law enforcement officers were, and also 3 that were killed in the same incident, as well as 1 in critical condition and additional that were shot and injured. So. To me, it's the most tragic one that I've been involved in. I don't know historically. I can't imagine that there's one that's any worse than what we're seeing today.
Chief, what are the questions that your investigators will be working to answer in the coming days, weeks, months?
Well, a lot of the questions that need to be answered, we don't even know what those questions are right now. We have to get a full understanding of why this occurred. And also to uphold the integrity of the investigation, we want to make sure that we check all the boxes that we need to so that we can get a full prosecution in this case if and when it comes down to that. We know some answers, but we still have many that we have to clear up and many that we have to continue to work on until we can really lock down what happened, who was involved, and move on from there. So.
Governor Wolf posted on social media that he's reached out to your department. Have you had that conversation with him? And if so, what was talked about?
I did. I spoke with the governor earlier today. He basically asked me, what do I need? He's here to support. Certainly appreciative of the phone call with him. Unfortunately, I know he would be here if he could right now. He's on his way to come and speak with us, but I did speak with him this afternoon.
Chief, while our prayers are for the families and the community, I am a East Charlotte resident since 1975. I appreciate what the police officers do in our community. Speaking on behalf of the East Charlotte community, I'm prayerful that there will be an increase of the police presence in our area, in East Charlotte.
Yeah, thank you for that. At this point, I'm concerned mainly with taking care of the officers, taking care of their families, and all of that comes into play later on how we respond to this community. But I want to make sure the community knows that we're going to continue to keep them safe. We have a lot of brave men and women out there that are going to continue working in that neighborhood, and they're going to continue to work in the best interest of our community and our citizens. So yes, I'll take 3 more questions. Yeah. Okay, all of the officers from CMPD that were injured were responding to the scene. The one sergeant that we have assigned to the task force was not injured. Yes. I don't know how many total officers were there serving the warrant, so I don't have that. That's from the U.S. Marshals task force that they had their contingency of their task force out there doing this warrant. So. Yes.
My condolences for you and the police force. I definitely feel like this is a bad, tragic situation that should never take place. In regards to law enforcement and just citizens throughout the state, what would you say could be a beneficial step that could be taken between relations between the police enforcement and whether it could be the citizens, felons, or whatever the case may be? What could be done to bridge the gap to level of this situation whenever it takes place?
Well, I'll be honest with you. Whatever gap there is, this level should never get to this place, right? I mean, you can have all the hate in your heart that you possibly can have. That should never result in taking a life, and much less taking multiple lives. So the Charlotte Mecklenburg Police Department and every agency you see behind me has a priority to continue to make sure that we have the best community relationships that we possibly can. But a lot of that also means that we have to be met halfway on certain things. So we're going to continue to do that. And like I said, we're going to continue to keep your community safe. So thank you. That's all I'll answer for now. So thank you.
Thank you all for being here. We do need your support, and we do need your prayers, both for our officers and the other officers involved, and for their families, and for those impacted in our community in other different ways. So stay tuned to CEP Public Affairs, our social media channels, and press releases that we're going to be putting out. We'll keep you up to date on all the information that we have as we get it. Thank you.
And you've been listening to Charlotte Mecklenburg Police Chief Johnny Jennings and also Mayor Vi Lyles talk about the details of what unfolded today, way worse than what we have known. And we understand now that 8 law enforcement officers have been shot, 3 U.S. Marshals are dead, 1 also shot there, and then 4 CMPD officers have been shot, 1 of them in critical condition right now, that unfolded at this house on a fugitive warrant that was being served by U.S. Marshals at 1:30 this afternoon.
Yeah, and we actually got a little bit more information on the timeline that happened from Chief Johnny Jennings. So like you mentioned, they were serving that warrant around 1:30, and when those marshals approached the door, they were met with gunfire from a suspect. Officers returned fire, and we're learning they shot that suspect dead right in the front yard. And then they continued to take gunfire, Johnny Jennings said, even after they had set up a perimeter, and that is why we had this long standoff situation. They believe that there were 2 shooters total, a high-powered rifle involved at one point. They were able to make contact with 2 other people inside that home who are now undergoing questioning, 1 female and 1 juvenile inside the house. They're trying to decide, or they're trying to see who else they were taking gunfire from, who was inside that house. So 3 people total involved in that.
Yeah, and just an incredible situation. Alicia unfolding, you're talking about how this is you never know what's going to happen when you leave the house. It's an incredibly tragic day for the city of Charlotte. And you have 4 people, 4 of them right now.
So let me ask y'all. Who do y'all believe? Who do y'all feel as though did the shooting? Because it was either the 17-year-old juvenile or it was either the female. So they said it was a total of 3. One of them was the actual suspect who the warrant was for. He lost his life in the front yard. They said they still received gunfire from inside the house. They brought out a 17-year-old juvenile and they brought out a female. Who do y'all believe, or do y'all believe? Because they saying it's a strong possibility that at least one of them, either the female or the juvenile, was returning gunfire. Could it have been both? Could it have been the juvenile and the female? Could it have been just the juvenile? Or could it have been the female? What are y'all thoughts? Salute Positive Vibes. Salute Sagas 01. Salute 80s baby. And it's messed up because they were there to serve the warrant for the suspect that's, dead, for a felon, with guns. Now, right is right and wrong is wrong. We call a spade a spade. Those officers have family members. Those officers belong to somebody. Sagas says the U.S. Marshals must have been tipped off. Do y'all think it's a possibility? Because when the marshals come, they coming. They came for me back in the 90s, and they were prepared. So in this case, especially, they suspect they're coming for him or her, because it didn't say whether it was a him or her, but he had weapons. So how did he or she get the drop on them? And then also, how were 8 officers, 8 officers get hit up by just one or maybe two? Let's go back to the news. Let's go back to the news.
Well into the rest of this week.
Right, and as we're learning to be able to find out the faces as to who lost their lives today, Mayor Bilal said, remember, this is your father, your husband, your friend, your neighbor, really painting the picture as to who isn't coming home tonight. Right now, we're going to have an interview with Vicki Foster, we understand, is on the line with us right now. She's the retired assistant Chief of Police at CPD. Vicki, it's so great to be able to see you. I'm sorry that we're seeing you under these circumstances right now, but you being, again, the Assistant Chief of Police at CPD at one time, and you know very well what kinds of things unfold with this type of situation. What can you tell us in terms of, not to this magnitude, but in terms of what we saw today, some insight?
Well, first of all, the most important thing is that everyone remembers the people that have sacrificed their lives today. It's one of those things that I'm sorry, I'm a little emotional.
Yeah.
But, in terms of what you saw today, you saw people come together, you saw the community come together. Obviously, you saw the officers come together. And I think Chief Jennings said it the best, is that these officers never know what they're going into. They never know if they're going to go home. And I think what you saw today was acts of bravery. And some people say, well, that's their job, but it's a very different kind of job. And I think what you saw today was what we all hope never happens, what every agency head hopes never happens. And that's what happened today. It's one of the worst things that we deal with in this career.
And it's so hard to deal with and continue to do your job. And Vicki, what is this like for the department to have to not only do an investigation, but also look out for those that they serve alongside, but they have to go back on patrol for their regular shifts? Just kind of talk about how they navigate that.
Yeah, I think a lot of times people tend to forget that that is one of the important things, because we still have to go out and answer calls for service, still help the community with whatever issues that they have. And, they don't really get a chance a lot of times to grieve. And it's a process. And they really need to be able to grieve. But the way our work is set up, it doesn't necessarily always provide for that. And so it is very hard for officers, because these are their friends, their comrades. And so it is a very hard thing to have to go back out to your regular duties and almost pretend as if nothing has happened, because nobody expects a lot of times for officers to have feelings. And they have to go right back out into the same situation. They have to worry about if that next call, is that going to be them? It is a very stressful time for officers and for the department.
Deputy Chief, when you hear about what transpired today, where the suspect came outside, was shooting, and then the officers, CMPD, rushed in to try to respond, what does that indicate to you about what did happen here, and how you just never know?
Yeah, you never know. I don't like to speculate on anything that happened today, but in general, you just don't ever know, and you're never prepared enough. I mean, I think that, people don't realize the preparation that goes into these type operations, with, the planning and the placement of people and the training. And even with all of that, you just don't ever know what's on the other side of that door, on the other side of that wall. You don't know what the suspect is thinking, and you have no idea what lengths they'll go to either not be apprehended or just to take an officer's life.
Vicki, you have been with CMPD for 29 years before you retired, so I'm sure today your phone has probably been ringing, letting you know exactly what was going on. And I don't want you, I'm not asking for you to give any names right now, but I'm just wondering if you know anybody who was involved, who might have been injured in the situation today unfold, any messages that you have for your brothers and sisters in blue.
I actually think it's probably best that I don't know who's involved, so I don't know any of the names of anyone that's involved. I have received a lot of messages today, a lot of community support. People have been calling and texting me left and right, just wanting me to know that, listen, we support CMPD. We're very sorry for what has happened. And that really made me feel good because a lot of times people don't really understand how much of a family that police departments are. And so I appreciated all the support today. And I know that the officers and the families of the officers will definitely appreciate all the support that they need now and that they'll need later.
And Deputy Chief, on that note, what do you want the public to take away from what happened today? We saw a woman who was at the press conference today, not a member of the media, but saying, this is something we want more patrols in East Charlotte. But what do you want the public to remember going forward after this tragic day?
Well, I think it's just important for the public to remember that, you have a great group of men and women in federal agencies, local, state, that are out here every day trying to do their job, trying to make sure that you're safe and keep you protected. And it's just really important for them to just show their support. And always remember that, you're not going to always agree with everything and how we do things, but to know that we are there to protect you and to make sure that you can get home safe. And, officers want to go home safe too. They want to go home safe to their families, and tonight that didn't happen. And so I hope that the community will rally around this family, these police departments, the U.S. Marshals, and just offer their support and prayers for the families and all of everyone's been involved.
Deputy Chief, I do have one more question, and that is, when this happens now, you still have the department that has to do their job. Going forward, is there some kind of mode that you go into now to help everyone still do their job, whether it's maybe a lighter force or something like that? How does that transpire over the next few days?
Well, typically, you pay attention to your officers. You have to, it's really critical actually at this time to pay attention to your officers and that you talk to them about how they're feeling. Some officers definitely won't say anything. They'll kind of go into a shell. It's hard to get officers to talk to counselors or to actually go see about themselves. And so it's incumbent upon the supervisors at this point to make sure that they are watching their officers, making sure they have a safe place to talk about how they feel and to be able to express honestly if they don't feel like they can work that day. We have to be open and be able to give leeway because some people can't process things as well as others. And so it's these next couple of days are very critical, and hopefully our supervisors are well trained in what they need to look for and to make sure that they are looking after officers to the best of their ability.
Vic Foster, we just want to thank you so much. I mean, just your time, 29 years on the CMPD task force in terms of just giving your service and giving your time, but also just your insight right now. I know your heart is heavy, and we just appreciate you spending a couple moments with us, giving your views as to what happened today.
Thank you. Thank you.
And we'll be thinking of the entire police force as well as the U.S. Marshals Office. And the whole Charlotte community is also thinking about these officers who were injured fighting for their lives or who also lost their lives. We're going to go out now live to Derek Dellinger, who's outside Uptown. And Derek, you saw flower memorials already being put up, but also in Uptown, a flag already lowered at half staff.
Yes, in fact, we are outside the federal building here where the U.S. Marshals office is. And you may have seen during that press conference just a little bit earlier, there was a solemn but rather quick and somber ceremony that happened out here, putting this flag here in front of the federal building at half-staff where it stays tonight. There's the flag here at half-staff, but there's also the flowers that have been placed here as well. We're told these flowers were donated by someone and they have been placed here. The federal building staff, they are encouraging people, if they do want to honor the law enforcement officers that were killed here, specifically the U.S. Marshals, that they can come by and place flowers on their own here at the flagpole here at the federal building on West Trade Street. It's important to note here, we've been watching this most of the afternoon. We were thinking that something might have been happening out here, and then we did notice the flowers show up, and also again, just in the past couple of minutes, the flag being lowered to half-staff where it remains tonight and where it will likely remain at least for the remaining time as far as the remembrance and the period of mourning that's going to be taking place, especially among the U.S. Marshal's office after what happened a little bit earlier today. Again, 3 U.S. Marshals killed, another injured, as well as the other CMPD officers that were injured in that serving of that search warrant just a little bit earlier today. And it's important to note here that this is likely what we're going to be seeing across the state, for that matter, over the next little bit as well, honoring those officers who were killed in the line of duty. Guys?
Yeah, Derek, thank you reporting for us live from Uptown today. I have a feeling that memorial there is only going to continue to grow, not just tonight, but over the next couple of days. Thank you.
All right, we want to head out to Casey Jones, who was at that press conference that just wrapped up about 5 minutes ago. And Casey, understand that this situation was a whole lot worse than what we initially understood. 8 people shot, 3 U.S. Marshals that were shot, killed.
Yes, this is a somber day for law enforcement, not just here in Charlotte, but statewide, across the region, and even across the country. We know that 8 officers in total were shot today. 3 of them were U.S. Marshals. Those were killed. 1 CMPD officer is still fighting for his life. Chief Johnny Jennings says that the rest are in stable condition and expected to recover. But this all started around 1:30 today when a U.S. Marshals task force was attempting to serve a warrant to a convicted felon for weapons. So they knew what they were getting into, but I'm sure no one could have predicted exactly the way this situation unfolded here. More than 3-hour standoff and 3 officers dead, 1 still fighting for his life. CMPD Chief Johnny Jennings wasn't ready to release the identities of those officers, but we do know that the suspect is dead. That suspect was actually killed right on the front lawn, and there were 2 more people that were inside of that home that have been taken into custody, 1 woman and another, a 17-year-old boy here. CMPD investigators are working to learn exactly how all of this happened. They're still working to learn what kind of weapons were involved, but Chief Jennings said it was likely a high-powered weapon. As you could hear in some of the videos we've been showing you earlier in our newscast, we heard that in that neighborhood over there, it sounded like a war zone. And we have been hearing from law enforcement. In fact, behind Chief Jennings and Mayor Lyles, there was a group of different law enforcement officers from the state troopers. We had ATF, Homeland Security, just all standing in solidarity for this very sad occasion. Mayor Lyles asked the community to continue to pray for these officers and their families. Of course, they went to work today thinking they were just going to do their jobs, and some of them, 3 of them, will not be coming home. Another is still fighting for his life. There are still a lot of questions here, and Chief Jennings says that investigators are going to be working through some of those questions in the coming weeks, days, and months. But Queen City News reporter Daniel Pierce has been out in the neighborhood today, so he'll be talking to people who witnessed this whole ordeal. And again, this is just a really tragic situation. We have learned that one of the processions for the law enforcement officers has already happened. I know we do have Queen City News reporter Savannah Russa at the hospital as well, so we might be able to catch another one. But this is just a really tragic situation all around, and there are still a lot of questions about how it happened. I'll send it back to you all in the studio.
Certainly a lot more information that we got today, but also a lot of information as far as absolutely how tragic it was, and that's what was reiterated by Chief Johnny Jennings just a few minutes ago in that press conference.
And we heard Casey just say there, the somber tone, is being felt. She mentioned the hospital. We're going to go live now to Atrium to see my co-anchor, Morgan Francis, who's field anchoring for us this hour. Morgan, she mentioned that you might have seen something or had seen the emergency vehicles come through, but now that we know what has transpired today, what can you tell us?
Well, Alicia, we're 1 day away from the 5-year anniversary of the UNC Charlotte shooting that tragically took students' lives, and I can only compare this type of police response that we saw here today to what I saw that day. There were so many police cruisers, you couldn't count them. There were streets blocked off all around Atrium Health, which you see behind me, the emergency room, where there are still a number of police cruisers at the entrance behind me, as well as at other parts of the hospital. And now that we know that 3 U.S. Marshals have lost their lives, and we still have 5 other officers who were shot, 1 who is currently fighting for their lives, it just speaks to the gravity of this situation and the response that we saw earlier. And I spoke with a man who was trying to get to the hospital because his mother was trying to get to the ICU. They were dealing with an emergency and trying to get to the hospital today with so many streets blocked off and all the traffic in the area was very difficult for families. But that man told me that once he got inside, that things were calm because these doctors and these nurses who work at this hospital know that this is what they're there to do, is to save lives. And you know that they worked as hard as they could to try to save lives for all those officers who came into Atrium Health today. So a very, very tragic update from CMPD. Mayor Vi Lyles said our community stands up for people. They stand up for the people who work for this community. And you're seeing that expressed on social media. Everyone you can imagine is sending their condolences to those Marshals' families who are going to be getting that horrible news tonight that their loved ones will not come home. I'm going to send it back to you in the studio.
Yeah, Morgan, just so hard for those families to see, and we're just all really feeling the gravity here in Charlotte. Thank you for keeping an eye on what's going on at the hospital. We want to go back out live now to our Daniel Pierce, who has been at the scene where this all happened on Galway Drive in northeast Charlotte. Daniel, I can imagine that scene looks so much different now than it did a couple hours ago.
Absolutely. We don't see near half of what the law enforcement officer presence that we had all throughout the day. In fact, we're still being kept about a block away here on Shannon House Drive on Galway. The house where all this happened is still about a block away. Officers have been allowing people that live in this neighborhood to walk a little bit closer. I'm told there's a park out that direction that people try and take their kids to. But we do know that people in this area have had a chance to get closer to it. We as the media are still being kept back. I was told the reason they're doing this is just to make sure that the scene is secured in a processing manner. Now, we've heard about the bravery of these law enforcement officers running in to do their job, protect their brother in arm. We have a chance to listen to a little bit of what that chaos sounded like whenever they arrived on scene, and some of it at times can be a little difficult to hear.
Stop fire. Command, he's shooting at us again. Return fire. Bring me that magazine. It's my brother's side door. Barrett, bring me my spare magazine. He's shooting rifle rounds. Everybody on scene. Nobody come up to the location. We got enough resources here right now. So stop where you come from.
All that started around 1:48 is when that traffic began, the communication between law enforcement officers. You hear that urgency in their voice, shots fired. You also hear that urgency in their voices. They're trying to get their fellow brother in arm, the person that they've worked with side by side day in and day out that has been shot. They're trying to get them help. Law enforcement officers just throughout the communication at times were, as you heard, calling for extra ammunition, but they were also at times calling for extra vehicles to get in here so that way they can start to transport, take other police officers that had been hit to take them to the hospital so they can have a fighting chance to survive. I had a chance to also speak with an individual that has worked as a paramedic up in the Greensboro, Guilford County area of the Triad. I had a chance to speak with him briefly throughout all this today of what a response looks like from an ambulance EMS side, and he said there's nothing more defeating and nothing more challenging to approach than a scene that is not secured, and you have law enforcement officers that have been hit by gunfire that need attention, but you as a paramedic cannot get to them to pull them out. So we sit here and talk about how tragic of a day it is, but also about how difficult of a real-time situation this is for the law enforcement officers, the neighbors that are being put inside their homes and being told to stay there, who they also don't really have any more insight than what they're able to hear over the scanner, over the airwaves and on broadcast, but also the paramedics that are trying to respond to this scene. Again, talking with some of the neighbors out here, they said, all right, they hear gunshots in this neighborhood. It's not uncommon to hear one or two go off, and at about 1:45, they said that they were sitting in their house. They were thinking today was just a normal day. Then at around 1:48, they said that they heard a couple of gunshots, thought, okay, this is just a typical day in the neighborhood. But then they heard what has been described to me as roughly 100 shots just go off back and forth, back and forth. They could detail high-powered rifles, and then some that are a little bit more familiar with firearms said that it sounded as if there was a smaller caliber weapon being used as well, and it was just a barrage of bullets going back and forth. And that is whenever they realized, okay, this is something completely different than what we've had to deal with in the past. It's also a moment as people are getting off work, they're trying to drive through this area. Again, portions of it still being blocked off right now, and they were asking us, hey, why can't we get to our homes? And a lot of people, though we are 5.5 hours removed in a sense, this is a lot for some of these people, the first time that they're hearing what exactly happened in their neighborhood. And keep in mind what we are still learning, but what may have happened to a neighbor that they've lived next to for years. Again, we're going to stay on scene. We're going to try and talk to more people as they go through. We're going to try and dig more into this police communication as they responded to this scene.
To understand exactly what they were going through. You're talking about how chaotic, but also how calm and professional they were to try to sit there and say, hey, this is what's going on, and we need to let the law enforcement officers to stay back, and we've got enough on hand before we need to get any more on the scene to get hurt in that situation. We've certainly seen how unbelievably detailed when you have 8 people that are involved in a situation like this. 3 of them shot dead today earlier, and now this is one of the deadliest law enforcement shootings you've probably seen nationwide.
Yeah, and the gravity of that can't be understated, and the whole community is going to feel that for the next coming days and weeks here, and we know that, and we are just hearing from one of our executive producers that Governor Cooper is now in Charlotte. We know that he and Chief Johnny Jennings had a conversation earlier today when all this was unfolding, pledging his support, and now we're hearing that he is in Charlotte. In what capacity, we don't know, but we can only assume it is because of what's happened today.
Absolutely, and we just hear the sentence, 8 officers shot. You know, it's just incredible. 3 U.S. Marshals officers have now died. CPD just released a tweet or on X moments ago, it was probably about 10 minutes ago, just putting out the news that 3 U.S. Marshals tragically lost their lives. They also just want to clarify of the 4 people on the CPD officers who were injured, 1 who was in critical condition tonight. They also mentioned that 1 officer was also from an outside agency who was also injured there. But when you look at, just as you said, just the gravity of how big this is, Mayor Lyles, when she was talking, she even said that she heard from the White House. She heard from so many different people calling, making calls, checking in, deciding what.
Sad day in Charlotte, North Carolina. Make sure everybody throw up some prayer hands. Make sure everybody send out some condolences for those 3 U.S. Marshals that lost their lives. And also send up some prayers for the officers that were wounded. Regardless of what some may think, we do need law enforcement. Of course, we don't need the crooked cops. We don't need the bad cops. but we do need law enforcement. Law enforcement keep us safe. I mean, can you imagine any U.S. city without law enforcement? So definitely a sad day for law enforcement. So make sure y'all throw up some prayer hands and send out some condolences. And I definitely will be on top of this case. I will be covering this story. I only live maybe about 15 or 20 minutes from where this tragic happened at. And so you all know how I get down. I like to get out and I like to have foot on ground, boots on the ground. So make sure everybody stay tuned as I keep y'all up to date on this tragic case. Once again, 8 law enforcement were shot in Charlotte, North Carolina. 3 of those officers were U.S. Marshals that lost their lives. The suspect lost his life as well. They do have a 17-year-old and a female down at police headquarters that they are questioning. I appreciate everybody for pulling up, and I'll see everybody on the next demonstration.